How's that? How's that for an intro? Community college or university? Good morning, by the way. It's morning for me. I just woke up. So put yourself in the shoes of a high school student in their senior year, or if you are a high school student in their senior year, keep your shoes on. And you see all your friends are going to university, or they're deciding to go to university. They're talking about it a lot. And I remember when I was in high school, one kid was going to, I think, the military academy or something, and he got an acceptance letter. And the day that he got it, he had it in like an envelope that he was carrying around all day. I don't know why he was carrying it around, but I mean, it's nice to be proud of things. But again, so you're in your shoes of that high school student. You've never thought of college really because no one in your family goes to college or had gone to college because you're a first generation student and you don't really know what you want to do. You are interested in some things and you did well in some classes and not well in others, and you have extreme anxiety about money. Actually, you know that university costs a lot of money and you hear horror stories of people taking out hundreds of thousands of dollars for 4 years of undergrad, and your family was always tight on cash. So that made the conversation of college even less likely to occur. So the segue obviously is that community college is significantly cheaper, of course. That's the typical explanation for sending people that aren't sure about what they want to do, sending them to community college for that reason, is because it's cheaper. The way I could approach this discussion, I could do like a pros and a cons, but I don't really want to do that. I think I'm just gonna go over some main points to start. I guess the first pro, I'm already going against my rules. First pro, cheaper. Per credit hour, community college is significantly cheaper. I think more than half the cost of the same course that you would take at a 4 year. So that's the obvious choice there. Like if you're just going to try to save money, yeah, you might as well just do 2 years at a community college and then get your bachelor's at a 4 year. But actually, I think what I'm gonna do, because I went to community college, and what I want to talk about is kind of like my experience a little bit with it. I graduated with a bachelor's of science in physics, and I have an associate's degree in science and mathematics or whatever. I don't remember what the actual title was anymore, but a big thing for physics people, obviously, is research. You want to be in, you want to have some sort of research experience when you're going to grad school, if you do decide to go to grad school, which is the path that I'm taking. If you don't have research experience, then it's almost impossible to get into a graduate program for physics. And the downside of community college is actually that there's no physics research being done, no like actual lab work or published papers that are coming out of community colleges. That's just kind of how it works. Professors at community college aren't focused on research, they're focused on the students and their teaching, which is why, in my experience, the professors at community college were significantly more attentive. And I had good teachers at my undergrad institution too, but they were a little bit more sparse for sure. But yeah, there's a lot more interaction, a lot more positive interactions with professors at community college than at my 4 year, as opposed to having to teach as per their contract because they were there to do research. So I had phenomenal professors at community college. I think it was, most of them only had their masters. Usually it was like a master's of education or something. Maybe a quarter of them had their PhDs. It was mostly the physics or the hard sciences that had their PhDs. I think maybe one had their PhD in mathematics or something. I don't know. But for the most part, they chose community college because they liked teaching and that's the path that they wanted to take. So, as a personal anecdote, some of my experiences at community college. Community college was like the first time that I had really become immersed in mathematics or physics. So there was one time I was doing my introductory physics 2 homework. It was E&M, and we were on circuits, and I was doing Kirchhoff's law. And my professor loved to give really, really long Kirchhoff law problems. I thought they were really fun. I was doing one of the problems. It was probably like 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and my professor, my calculus 2 professor, Mr. O, great guy. He saw that I was doing homework and he came into the classroom. I was just by myself doing homework because, that's what you do. You're by yourself doing your homework, or you should probably be in a group. If you're a high school student, do group work. It's better for learning. Anyway, he came in and sat down, and he was just watching me do my homework, and he was just asking me questions about it, doing that simple Kirchhoff's law problem. I walked through it and explained it to him, and it was just really satisfying. And it was one of the first times in my life that someone that was significantly higher than me in education, age, and experience, where they weren't completely sure what I was doing, but they just sat down and listened. At this point, I hadn't tutored anybody, I hadn't TA'd at all. I don't even think I'd really given any academic presentations at this point. That was the first time I actually felt confident in explaining something academic that I was doing. It obviously helps that I had had him as a professor the previous semester, so we got to know each other. I don't know if you would ever get that. At least I would never get that at my undergrad institution. Maybe because the professors are so used to exceptional students. I'm not sure. I'm not calling myself exceptional. They're used to people being kind of overachievers because the classwork is hard. So you have people just in classes studying all the time. And I don't know. I didn't experience people trying to go above and beyond understanding the material too much in community college. So I suppose one downside, I think, is what most people would have. I'm quite an introvert, so I don't think it'd be a problem. It's much of a problem for me. Like the college experience, I suppose, isn't prominent at community college, right? My community college had dorms, and that is not the normal setup. Most community colleges, as I understand, do not have dorms, so students can't live on campus. My community college was quite large, actually. It looked like a miniature. It looked like a mini university. There were dorms, and I think because of that, people were able to experience more of like a college level experience, as opposed to having to live in like apartments off campus and you weren't always around students. One thing I always see mentioned from universities is that students should choose to live on the dorms because they perform significantly better. I don't know how true this is. So I found this one study on the impact of off-campus housing on student academic performance and school loyalty. But essentially, they just talked to university students from 5 different universities. The conclusion from this research project is that living off campus in purpose-built student housing appears to have little to no negative impact on the students' academic engagement and performance, including grades, intent to graduate, level of participation in university clubs and activities, school loyalty, or personal growth. Most universities, I believe, require freshmen to dorm, but it's very expensive. It's crazy, crazy expensive to dorm compared to just renting. You have to pay for, well, you don't have to do the meal plan, but I think most decide to do the meal plan. All right, so back to the professors. So we're talking about physics, right? So if you're focusing completely on physics, then you're probably going for a research position somewhere. You want to go to grad school and you want to become a physicist or something sort of related to that. You want to be a scientist, and most scientists have a PhD. Researching or publishing papers and whatnot, you want a PhD. The downside of community college, obviously, is there's no research. I don't see that as a downside. At least if for me, it was not at all a downside, because I spent 2 years at community college. I got my associates, and I did exceptionally well. Exceptionally, I got a 3.8 GPA, which is good. It's pretty good. And so I did well in my classes. I had some pretty cool experiences. I did like a NASA community college program, Aerospace Scholars, whatever. It's here somewhere, logo, I don't know. Yeah, I thought it was a great experience, and then I transferred to a 4-year. I was focusing so much on going to grad school at that time, and I was researching so much because again, first generation, so I had no idea how going about finding research or what research was really. I didn't really know, but I knew I needed to do it. I just went on my 4-year institution's physics faculty page and pretty much just emailed everyone that had anything to do with astrophysics or anything. I don't remember all the emails I sent, but I was just looking for a research position. And I sent my CV in and stuff, and I eventually landed a position in as a research assistant for high energy particle physics. And at that time, they were working on building the upgrade to the LHCb experiment at CERN. I think that went in, I think it was in, like, it started running over this last summer, and I think it's collecting data now. That was amazing. And I hadn't even started at my 4-year when I was given that position. I was fortunate enough to go to a university that had a lot of research, but I also chose that because it was significantly more expensive. It's a private university. The cost of attendance for this 4-year is significantly more because it's a private university. And I could have gone to a public university, but the research opportunity was so much less. For a 4-year, obviously, in physics, you want a heavy research dependent university. I guess the thing that kind of sucks about that, I didn't really know what kind of, I thought I wanted to do theoretical physics for a long time. I eventually decided against it. So I think I decided against it in my junior year of undergrad because I was talking to one of my, I think I was talking to my advanced mechanics professor about his work, and he was making slight modification. He was trying to make modifications to Einstein's field equations to better replicate the beginning of the universe. I'm not going to pretend to know. I'm not a theory person. After listening to him talk, I was just like, I don't really feel like dedicating years and years of my life adding another term to an equation, which it's cool. It's really cool. I mean, that's like the pinnacle of physics, right? General relativity and quantum mechanics are like the two pillars of physics. Not to downplay it. That's cool. I wanted to focus on something more tangible, like planetary science, which is what I'm going for. My university had no planetary science groups. So I did high energy particle physics and biophysics. So I did 2 different research experiences. I published a paper, just a third authorship, but nothing crazy, in biophysics. So I got a lot of experience. My lab was well funded, so they could send me to conferences to find out what I wanted to do. I spent a long time doing stuff that I wasn't completely interested in, but I think that's just part of the game. You know, you have to do the things that don't interest you to find the things that you do interest you, if that makes sense. I went to an astrobiology conference in last year, the beginning of last year, called AbSciCon. There was a lot of really interesting stuff. They were talking about, there was people from NASA that were working on the Europa Clipper. There's people working on Dragonfly to Titan, and there was a lot of other missions there too. There was a lot of amazing research that was being talked about, and there was a few professors that were going that I really wanted to talk to because on paper I was really interested about their work, and God, it's embarrassing to think about me trying to talk to them because I'm not very good at talking to people for the first time. You know, it's quite hard. So I went to some of those professors' talks that they were giving, and there was one that I was really interested in, and I really wanted to hear how he presented his work. And I think like halfway through it, it was something on chemistry. I don't remember anymore. But I was so bored. I was so bored I just left. And that's great, you know, because I found early on the stuff that I really, really didn't want to do. I didn't want to stay in high energy particle physics anymore. I didn't want to do biophysics anymore, even though I still like biophysics. Which it was just material sciences, essentially. It's good. I guess the point is that I went to an expensive university. The amount of money that I put into it was worth it because I got to experience a lot of things that I didn't want to do, and that was the phenomenal part about attending that 4 year. But the community college experience prepared me for university life. As a first generation college student, undergraduate and graduate, I was put into a position where there wasn't the worry of prestige or the expectation of a 4 year bachelor's degree weighing over my head or the $60,000 a year tuition weighing over my head, and much less pressure that allowed me to thrive in an environment like community college. And that's for me. I'm someone that is very invested in academics, and I'm not someone that puts a lot of effort into social circles and whatnot. I'm very bad at it, and I don't recommend being like me. I required a lot of time to study and to be good at teaching. Well, I think I've, and people have told me that I'm good at teaching new ideas, but that's only because I put in so much effort in reviewing and doing problems beforehand so I don't embarrass myself by not having notes prepared or something when I'm working with a group of people or whatever. I always prepare problems in advance that I had already gone through, or I go through their homework in advance, so I can better help them. Okay, here's another anecdote. This story is probably the most satisfying experience that I had at community college that you can get at a 4 year too. All of the other things, all the less pressure on a community college student compared to a university student, for me, helped me be able to tutor better. Anyways, so when I started tutoring in my second year at community college, there was this girl that was taking calculus 2, and she had some learning disabilities. I don't remember necessarily what it was, but I don't know if I ever knew actually. But I would give her a problem, or we would go over a problem on her homework, and I would just say, start the problem how you think you should do it. And she would go up to the whiteboard and start writing, and she would start talking about concepts and ideas that had nothing to do what we were doing. I think we were going over convergence and divergence of different functions, and I put in an enormous amount of effort every week to try to find ways to explain it to her. And it seemed like the best way was essentially just repetition. And like which is kind of how I learned too, just repeating the same problem over and over again, or same types of problems, until they really stick and the ideas stick. So I tutored her for a few weeks, maybe like a month before her exam on that material. I don't remember what her grades ended up being, honestly. I know that's kind of a downer. Anyways, so I tutored her and she was doing well in her homeworks and stuff. Her teacher for Calculus 2 was also my professor for Calculus 3 at that time. I was in his office hours for some homework, for some Calc 3 homework. He just double checked that I was the one tutoring her because I think she mentioned that I was tutoring her. And he told me that I was doing a phenomenal job because he wasn't able to really get the ideas through to her. He was really happy that someone was able to, and he was really happy that I was able to communicate the idea in a way that she could understand that he couldn't explain. That was so incredible for me. It was just so inspiring that that a professor could be like, you did something better than he could, in helping someone like that. And if someone that didn't have great grades in high school, on this material, and then just to kind of do a complete 180 within a few years of hard work, it was just phenomenal. It was such a great experience. I hope other people can experience that too, because a lot of academia is kind of soul crushing, and I experienced a lot more soul crushing experiences at my undergrad 4 year institution than I ever did in my associate's program. And I think that's just because the stakes are higher for the most part, because you're having to do research and there's a lot more riding on your work But at the same time, there's not. You know, you're an undergrad, so no one's really expecting that much. But at the same time, they kind of are. I don't know. I'm not at that point yet where I have like my own students, so I don't know what to expect of undergrads really. But it felt like sometimes there was really high expectations for me, and then others there weren't. Other times there was not. And so I don't know how to make of that yet, honestly. The one final thing that might be worth noting is that, you know, if you have a full ride and you're like valedictorian to your local or to your high school and you have a full ride to a university that you like, take the university. I probably should have said this at the beginning, but I obviously didn't have a full ride to university and I had to take out some loans to pay for my college, but it might bite me in the ass later, but I don't currently regret it. And everyone's situation is different financially, and the responsibilities that you have outside of academics. I'd like to think that what I've said in this video works kind of generally, maybe generally for the people that I've known and the experiences that I've had. I think most people that I would run into, I would recommend that they attend community college if they're unsure of what to do and they don't have a full ride to some university. So, yeah, community college is good. I like it. Yeah. I don't know how you end videos, so bye.